Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conference Connection. I am Dr. David Morgan, and here with my amazing dear friend, Chad Hymas.
Your partner in crime.
Chad and I were just talking about his desires to move to Cancun someday and how he's, I can't follow you there. Although I do speak Spanish.
That was we were talking, and that was that was, I don't know that was as strong. I've been to Cancun several times, and I always loved the ocean, but truthfully, I don't know that I could ever live on the ocean just because I don't swim. So let's just make it easy. I don't swim.
That's true. That's true.
So,
it's a nice place to visit, right?
Yeah,
nice
I can visit. So.
Well, we're excited to have you here tonight to talk about another talk from the April 2022 General Conference. And it's just what a blessing to have these conferences every 6 months and to hear from these good women and men who teach us doctrine and help us stay on the straight and narrow path. We get this, we deviate, we start walking and all it takes is just a couple degrees off, and pretty soon you're out in the weeds. And these conferences can just kind of pull us back and get us where we need to head.
They seem to always come right at the right time too. You notice that? They just right as we're starting to weasel down and I need some, and then we can always go back and listen to the pre-recordings. But getting new and updated information, and hearing the new temples announced and seeing the new changes that are happening, and what's the church take on today's world? It's rejuvenating. It's always exciting when that comes around. So it's a fun time of year, both spring and fall when that happens. I love it.
So. Me too. So tonight we'll talk about Elder Gong's talk. It's called "We Each Have a Story," and I'll tell you a little bit about Elder Gong. Garrett W Gong was born in Redwood City, California, in 1953. He married Susan Lindsay in January 1980. They are the parents of 4 children and 3 grandchildren. He has served in numerous stake callings, including full-time missionary, seminary teacher. We're kindred spirits there. I loved teaching seminary. Bishop, stake mission president, stake president, and Area 70. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Asian and University Studies from Brigham Young University in 1977. In 1979, he received a Master of Philosophy degree, and in 1981, a doctorate in international relations from Oxford University, where he was a Rhodes Scholar. In his professional life, Elder Gong has served as a General Authority 70 from April 3rd, 2010, until the time of his call to the 12. He was named as a member of the presidency of the 70 on October 6th, 2015. From 2011 to 2015, Elder Gong was a member of the Asia Area Presidency, headquartered in Hong Kong, and concluded that service as Area President. In 1985, he served as Special Assistant to the Undersecretary of State at the U.S. State Department, and in 1987 as a Special Assistant to the U.S. Ambassador in Beijing, China. From 1989, he served in several positions at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. He was Assistant to the President for Planning and Assessment at Brigham Young University until April 2010. So Elder Gong was in high demand long before his call to the apostleship, and looks like he's had a lot of international success as well, and hopefully
both in the church and in his professional life with the government, right?
Yeah, may have been instrumental in negotiating the terms to get that Shanghai temple built, which is
possibly. I don't know the story behind that, but I do know this. China is a closed. You don't talk church.
That's right.
In China, and I'm sure Elder Gong has had a hand in. We do have missionaries in China.
Right.
We do have missionaries in China that are doing service work. And I know that Jim Fredette, a basketball player for the very shirt that you're wearing, had a talk with Elder Gong about how he could be a better missionary when he was playing basketball over in China. So that's kind of a cool story. So anyway, very, very instrumental in the Lord's work moving forward. And his first name is Garrett. So we should, we're talking about our history and our family history, and he in his talk he says he's probably the only human being named Garrett W Gong, right? Garrett W Gong in the entire world. Garrett Walter, and he's got Dutch, Chinese, and American in
Right.
So, I thought that was funny. So,
which is probably why he says he's the only one ever, because that's an odd combination.
It is
Dutch, American, and Chinese. And I think he's the first. He's definitely the first Chinese American member of the Quorum of the 12. And probably only the third, because we've got Elder Suarez from Brazil, and then Elder Uchtdorf from Germany, and then Elder Gong from China. So, yeah, he says in the estimated 70 to 100 billion people that have lived on the earth in their entire Earth's history, he's the only one that's been Garrett Walter Gong.
It's awesome. He says that. I love the fact that, and it goes right into this, and he says, yeah, there's been 110 billion people tops, maybe 70 billion at the bottom, and he just goes right into this. He goes into this, and he says we each have a story, and he really nails this home when he talks about the power of looking up our lineage and our heritage, and he makes it personal to him and shares some stories that are just fascinating, and it drives one when you listen to his talk to find out your own lineage, your own history, your own story. And it's not story, it's stories. It's plural.
Right.
I mean, I think that our stories, as you look back at your lineage, they are like the sands of the sea. They're endless. I mean, they just go on and on and on. The stories are never ending. And it's neat to go back and see what your family's accomplished and where you come from and what they've done with their lives. And I know that you're going to be sharing one tonight about a third or fourth great grandfather. So I'm excited to hear about that. But yeah, I've got something to share as well. But this is a very motivating and very inspirational talk about, even if you're not into genealogy, if you don't like it, or maybe you haven't found a niche for it or a passion or a purpose for it, this talk, you can't help but listen to it and have this little inkling, like, I wonder what my fourth great grandpa did, or my fifth great grandpa. It creates that drive. And I'm one of those people. My wife loves genealogy. I haven't been keenly interested in it, but the more that I am around it, the more I am driven to be more passionate about it. And this talk does that for you.
It's very, I don't know if addictive is the right word, but it's kind of an apt description. When you start getting into family history, there's a compelling piece about it to learn about these people that were your ancestors. And I think the thing that's important to remember is that they were just like us. We tend to see them, I was looking on Family Search today as I was preparing for this, and there's all these old pictures of my ancestors. And of course, and some of them are quite old, pictures from the 1800s, and they just look very flat, and, there's these grainy black and white pictures, not a lot of personality to them. But as I started thinking about it, I thought they were just like me. They had lives just like I did, that were full of ups and downs and successes and failures. And they lived for 60, 70, 80 years, and they had a whole lifetime of experiences and stories to tell. And I thought, well, they're just as multifaceted as I am. And just because I can't, see that in that picture, perhaps the more I learn about them, the more I'll learn about, just what they were like. Their story is like my story. And just like I wouldn't want my fourth great grandson to look at an old picture of me and say, oh yeah, that's David Morgan. Well, yeah, he probably didn't do much, or
little pasty, little paint.
Yeah. He didn't, that grainy picture. He didn't, there probably isn't much to him. I would hate for him to think that, because of course there's a ton to me, and I want him to know about that as well, just like he'll want his, grandchildren to know about that. So
what's cool about that, David, is I did the same thing that you did. It's intriguing to me to look at those older pictures, but then I thought of this. That's kind of like what social media is for me today, for my fifth great grandchild. I mean, they'll be able to see it. You can create video, and you can also go back. You can place pictures when you do your own genealogy inside of those, or other people in your family then can research and see those pictures as well if you have something that they don't have. And you can add stories and read all about those people, and it goes on and on, and it's never ending, like we were talking earlier. And so that's kind of what I thought of when I was looking at some old photographs of my Aunt Zina, who I was looking at today, and thinking and reading about her and some of the challenges she went through that relate exactly to what I'll be sharing here in a few minutes. I thought to myself, my fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth great grandchildren, they'll be able to look back on something that was once called Instagram, and they'll be able to hear me talk.
Right.
And
That's true.
And hear my voice and actually see the images behind me. And there was, grandpa, they actually had light bulbs back then. Now we're on windmill system, and something or whatever that was,
Whatever they're doing.
Yeah, whatever they're doing back then. They'll be flying airplanes everywhere they go. I don't know what they'll be doing, but they'll be flying, some sort of efficient, non-fossil fuel type stuff that
exactly. Yeah.
They'll wonder about all that. So.
Well, and that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that because obviously technology has advanced, and so our descendants will have much greater advantage of being able to kind of see us more multidimensionally than we're able to see our ancestors. You're right. All this stuff that gets preserved, they'll tune into some old conference connection video in 2130. And say, hey, those are our great grandfathers there.
Look at how bad the color is.
Yeah.
They're going to call this black and white. We think this is
they actually had to use cameras. They couldn't just connect mentally.
All they got to do now is
other.
look at their watch, and I can talk to anybody I want in the world, right? And so you're exactly right.
So. Well, Elder Gong, I love he says, do you know your story? Do you know what your name means? World population grew from 1.1 billion people in 1820 to nearly 7.8 billion in 2020. And that's huge. Do you think that had to do with the restoration? Joseph Smith and Heavenly Father placing his children and things growing? I mean, I thought about that. It's got to be, right?
It's got to be. I mean, so many things happened in the 1800s that put things in place for the church to be restored. And now we have more people on the earth than ever before in just a short 200 years. And prior to that, there was a billion and less than that. And I just think there's never been, more people on the earth at one time than there is today.
Exactly.
And 200 years ago, there was a sixth of that.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's definitely got to have to do with the restoration of the church, and not just the gospel, but the increasing knowledge that Heavenly Father has been giving to us throughout that restoration, knowledge in medicine. And other things that enable us to live longer and for babies to be born and not to die so quickly.
Right.
So
millions of people died of illness. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I didn't think about that. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of things and I think that 1820, when the heavens reopened again, they didn't just reopen for spiritual knowledge, they reopened for all sorts of knowledge, and things have been revealed to people the internet, that what you are watching today is revealed from God to us to be able to stay connected, so that you guys don't have to come to Chad's house to hear he and I sit in a room and talk, but hundreds and thousands of people can hear this and can hear it forever.
In this next
paragraph, we need to do that someday. We need to do a live conference connection someday, and we'll
for sure. I think we could do that. We will get together and do that for sure. That we have adoptive children. You know that. Yeah, in this next paragraph, when he made that comment about adoptive children, it sparked my daughter's ears up. And because he says this, whether you're by birth or by adoptive lineage, we are all we are all connected to our Heavenly Father's family. And my daughter said, I need to learn more about my birth mother. I need to find her. And I said to her, wrong, right, or indifferent, I know I'm right. Gracie, you will have the chance to not just learn from her, but to also teach and share with her what you've gone through in your life. I don't know if your mother and your father, she specifically said her mother now, but I'm sure it's her father as well. But she has this great desire, this drive to learn more about her birth mother, which has been hidden and kept in a dark secret. And the heavens know of this. And so when she heard this, when I reread it in preparation for today, I realized that blood is not a separation of God's children here on this earth. While we all differ in our bloodlines and our bloodstreams, we are all connected ultimately to Adam and Eve and our first parents, and have been separated out throughout the course of time. And so that was special to me when he read that, because I have two children that come from different countries, and of course they have different colors of skin, and yet they're my blood. We come from the same grandparents, we come from that same lineage. And so that was special.
Yeah, I thought about that as well when I read this. I thought about your adopted children.
Many people watching, you have adopted children, or people in your family, but we're all connected. We are all connected. So
exactly,
never want to lose that.
Well, and it's and we're all connected from our spiritual lineage, right? I mean, we're all brothers and sisters from the same heavenly parents, which is awesome. Elder Gong talks about, he says, connect your living memory family names with the 10 billion searchable names Family Search now has it on its online connection.
FamilySearch.org, that's right.
10 billion, yeah, FamilySearch.org. If you are unfamiliar with FamilySearch.org, this is a free service that is provided by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is, I don't know if this is true, but I'm guessing it might be. If it's not the largest, it's definitely one of the largest family history or genealogical websites ever. And the church has invested millions and millions of dollars in trying to collect these records and put them in a way that's just easy for us to access. I remember trying to do family history 30 years ago, and you had to have special programs for your computer.
All paper. It was all paper.
Or it was all paper. You'd have books that you would work off of.
Today, it's just right.
And the church has been scanning records almost nonstop for decades in order to get these things in Family Search. So that's just FamilySearch.org. If you're interested in finding out about your ancestors, go there. You do have to have an account, but it's free to sign up. And you just create an account and get in there, and you can start connecting yourself to people. And probably someone has done some research into your ancestors, cousins or whatever they are. And so you might get on there and say, hey, here's already some stories about my parents and grandparents and stuff like that. It's an amazing, amazing resource. And the church has been heavily invested in that for a long time, because, of course, we believe that not only do we have the opportunity to make covenants with God, but that our ancestors do as well. And that's why we build temples, so that we can go there and we can make covenants on behalf of our deceased ancestors to give them the chance to be baptized or receive other temple ordinances
that are necessary,
that were not available when they were here.
And that all has to be done. That's all got to be done.
All has to be done.
So genealogy ultimately will be the crowning principle and ordinance of all temple work. Genealogy has to be. Yes. That's a major piece. That's why the church is so involved and invested so much and so many resources into that. It is perhaps, we have we say the foundation of our church is the Book of Mormon and the scriptures there, and that is true. But genealogy is all over in the Book of Mormon. Those are our ancestors, and so I think that plays a huge role. I love this part where he says when he looked up his 30th great grandfather, whose name was First Dragon Wong.
Isn't that great?
First Dragon Gong.
First Dragon Gong.
And he lived in Gong City in China. And when Elder Gong went back and visited Gong City, they said, we've been waiting for Garrett to return.
Yes.
So here you have 30 generations later, and all these people that are Latter-day Saints and non-Latter-day Saints are saying, your great, 30 times, First Dragon was his name.
Right.
Think about that. That'd just be kind of cool. I mean, I'm just saying that kind of goes along with the Chinese culture, right? This is some of the things that we know about China today.
Heavy influence on family.
Yeah, had influence. Yeah, and he went back and they said that we've been waiting for you to come and visit us. Yeah. And 30 years, this is 30 generations. I just thought that was powerful. That was cool. So
I think, I don't know. I don't think there's anywhere I could go in the world where someone would say, oh, we've been waiting for David to return.
First Dragon Morgan. Thank you for
First Dragon Morgan.
For Sandy, Utah. We've been waiting for you in Sandy, Utah. Thanks for coming back to Sandy, Utah.
That's awesome. Elder Gong says, when asked where meaning comes in life, most people rank family first. This includes family living and gone before. Of course, when we die, we don't cease to exist. We continue to live on the other side of the veil. And I think that's right. I remember when I was growing up, so my grandparents, who are both deceased now, we lived in the same town as they did, Bakersfield, California, and they were retired. And Grandpa did very well for himself, and they had enough money to pretty much do whatever they wanted. And so I was kind of curious where they would travel once he retired, where they would go. And I pictured, exotic locations like, Paris or Amsterdam or New Zealand or something. And they were going to places like Reno and Boise, and nothing against Reno and Boise, but they're a little less extravagant than Amsterdam and Paris. But why were they going to Reno and Boise? Because that's where their children and grandchildren were. They were going to visit them. And that's what they did, is they spent time driving around, visiting their children and grandchildren. And I remember thinking, if that's what's important to him and to my grandma, then that's probably what's really important. After living, most of their lives, they'd kind of settled in on what was most meaningful to them. And as I get older, I find the exact same thing. I want to be where my family is. I
Sure.
want to go visit them, and I want to do some fun things as well, and some other things. But if I had to choose between, Layton, Utah, where one of my sons lives, and Paris, France, I'd choose Layton, Utah,
Yeah,
and I'd go
for
see
sure.
my son and daughter-in-law and my granddaughter there.
I get that. Yeah, nothing better than spending time with your family, for sure. So no, it goes on here, and I'm trying to stay ahead of you here, but it's hard because there's so many good life lessons as he talks about his great. I think it's a good time right now, David, for you to share the story that you and I talked about.
Oh yeah, you bet.
I think you should share that. Then I'll maybe share a little something that would add maybe to what you were going to share. But this is
Of
kind of
course.
a cool story.
So this is my Newman Bulkley is my third great grandfather, or third or fourth. And he was born in 1817 in New York. And he was the first one to convert to the gospel of Jesus Christ through the Bulkley line, which is my mother's line. And so I'll just read a little bit of his history. At the age of 5 years, he moved with his parents to Pennsylvania, where he remained until he was nearly 21 years of age. He then moved to Missouri, where he remained for 5 months and then had to leave because he and his family were Mormons. So he was part of that.
He got kicked out.
And been getting kicked out. He next moved to Scott County, Illinois, and later to Pike County in the same state. He met Jane Draper, who he married in 1844. And then in 1845, he was part of the Exodus, the church from Nauvoo. They went to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and that's where the call came from the Mormon Battalion, which was a military conscription that ended up going down to Southern California. And so he enlisted to defend the United States of America, left his wife and their 6-month-old. Says when he took his departure, his wife was so sick she could scarcely sit up and only had provisions to last her and her child about 1 month. I can't imagine that. Honey, I got to go defend our country. Here's a month worth of food. I know you can't sit up, but hopefully people will take care of you. So he did. They went to California. He ended up being discharged there, came back to Salt Lake, remained there for about a year, and then he went back to Iowa and found his wife there, who was still living there and working to try to keep herself and their child alive. Says he next went to work to make an outfit with which to return to Salt Lake. It took him 4 years to earn sufficient means for that purpose, but finally he crossed the plains and arrived with his family in the valley in 1852. He settled in Springville, Utah County, which became his permanent home. It says Newman passed through the hard experiences, which was the lot of the pioneers of Utah. About the year 1880, his health began to fail him, and he never after that fully regained his former strength. His last illness lasted about 18 days, and he died in Springville on March 13th, 1830. Newman never wavered in the cause of truth, and his dying testimony to his family and to all others was that he knew the gospel was to be true and enjoined his children to be true to the same. I like that story. I've been to his grave in Springville, Utah. And he, in San Diego, California, there is a museum which is set up to the Mormon Battalion, and his rifle is actually there in that museum. I haven't been to that museum. I need to go there and see that. But the thing, I guess, that just was tender to me as I read that, where he basically, on his dying bed, he said, I know the gospel is true, and I want all my children to do the same. And so I have to think that he's looking down on me right now, just with a bit of gratitude, because now his great, great, great grandson is still preaching the gospel and holding true to that thing that he started for our family. He was the first convert on the Bulkley side, and it's been a strong tradition ever since. So, and I found that on Family Search, and it took me about 5 minutes to go and find that story. So that's how easy that is. If someone had to put the information there, obviously, and one of my relatives had put that story on there, but I'm saying you might have stories out there. So it inspires me. It inspires me to do well and to honor his good name, that he started many years ago.
I have a similar experience. The only thing is I didn't do the history myself or look it up. My wife sent me a link and said, you need to look at this. And she found it. And it is on my father's side, and her name is Zina. And in the 1870s, she was in a wooden wheelchair due to a broken spinal cord injury. Mm-hmm. And I immediately, I mean, there's pictures of her. They're black and white. They're plain. She's got gray hair. But it reads, as you read about her and what her daughters put in there about her mother, she never complained. She liked to laugh and she smiled. She was in an accident, in a farming accident, and ended up breaking her back, and she was paralyzed and lived 32 years like that. In the 1870s, we're talking before, understand, that never happens. You don't hear about, you barely live 30 years today. And so for that to happen, and she continued to live on the farm. My Uncle Roy stayed with her, and all they had was daughters, and there's letters written by her grandchildren, great grandchildren. And so I had just engulfed in this, and my wife found it, just as she does genealogy daily, and sent this to me and said, this is something you're going to want to read. And I think she's trying to hook me, and it worked. I mean, I was when I read this, because it was just, now I've never met Aunt Zina. Obviously, I was born, 100 years after she was on the earth, but I feel this connection, like she is watching me. Like I haven't seen her in a vision. I feel this, like she is close to me, like she is watching me, and we have this inseparable bond, and she's rooting for me, and she's cheering for me, and so it's stuff like that really kind of doesn't matter what anybody else believes. It matters what I believe, and I believe that she's right there watching, and so had Chandel not sent that to me, I probably would have had a great day and everything would have been well, but that boosted up my day tenfold. And I think genealogy does that for us. And I'm learning that as I'm becoming more intrigued, because I'm one of those fence sitters when it comes to genealogy, and I'm being converted over to a full-time genealogy. Somebody wants to go to the temple and search and do my own names. But I have been one of those that haven't been intrigued by it in the past, and just haven't wanted the time, and just haven't had an interest. But I'm finding myself, like you said, that word addiction, it does become that, where you can't stop. When you start reading and see that you can't stop it, it's beyond any other talent or any other desire that I think that we have before us. That when you start to read and see your history and see what your ancestors did, what they went through and what they've gone through, it bolsters you to know, I can get through hard things too. I can get through this life as well. I can have purpose. I can have perspective. I can have passion, and I can do all those things. And I think this is a great talk that kind of sets that tone for us to be able to do that.
Well, and I love that you mentioned how just, getting connected to our ancestors, and how that's your belief that she's watching over you. And that's such a hopeful belief. I believe the same thing about my grandpa Newman, that he's watching over me as well. And I read the most interesting thing on a news app maybe a week ago. And it wasn't a religious news article, but it was like 20 near-death experiences people have had, and they each described their experience. And so I was just curious to see what it was about. And every single person, as they described what happened, as they died and then were brought back to life, they described feelings of peace and calm. Some people said there was darkness, but it was a peaceful darkness. Some people said there was light, but that it was a peaceful light. They said all of their cares and their worries were immediately gone. A lot of them described having contact with their ancestors, and sometimes people saying, like they said, my grandma was there and she said, it's not your time to come here yet. And then immediately I was back on the operating table. And most of these people were not religious. And in fact, one person said he'd been an atheist all his life, and he had this experience, and he says it really messed with me, because I thought there was nothing, and then all of a sudden I was experiencing this reality that was different. And the truth is, like Elder Gong said, we don't stop at the end of this life. We continue, just in a different form, and all of that personality and everything continues to go with us. And so this idea of learning about our ancestors and thinking about them and thinking about their how they look over us, I think it's great. I'll be doing the same thing for my, fourth great grandchildren who I won't meet in this life, but heck yeah, I'm going to be watching over them and thinking about them and rooting for them and doing, if I have any pull on the other side to be able to, help them in some sort of way. So yeah, I love the hope that comes from investigating our family history, learning about, like you said, how people did hard things. They survived.
They did.
They were able to get through it, and we can too.
I like this quote that he says where Elder Gong quotes the prophet Joseph Smith and says, "It may seem to be a very bold doctrine that we talk of, a power which records or binds on earth and binds in heaven, and that we create here and exist with eternal glory. What we create here does exist and create eternal glory in the hereafter. And indeed, we without our family members cannot be made perfect." He goes on to say that, and I've do some math on this. Every person that's ever lived has had to have two people, which then turns into four.
Right.
I just said, do the math on that. The numbers add up really quick. So for every person that's alive, you've had to have like 150 people that have made it possible for you to be here,
right,
on this earth at this time. And he goes into kind of those numbers and makes those stats come to life for you, so that you have a desire to look up those 150 people. And then he makes kind of a fun comment as he enters the middle of his talk and says, if you think for one second that your cousin Jenny or your uncle Bart has done all of your genealogy, think twice.
Right.
In other words, get to work. It's never done. So don't think that your genealogy freak aunt or my wife would be an example of that, has done all the genealogy and the paperwork is done. There's never an end. Get to work and go find your genealogy. Find your story is what he says.
Well, and the other thing that you can do on Family Search is, I mean, even if the connections have been made, you can say, well, great Aunt Ida has done all of the connections and all the temple work is done. You can still put in memories. You can add pictures. You can do things like that. There's all sorts of things. When I was searching earlier today to find information about Newman Bulkley, I loved his particular site because it had a bunch of pictures, things from the Mormon Battalion, stories of his history. And then I'd click on other ancestors and all there was a picture. There was nothing else. Yeah. And I was a little disappointed. And I thought, well, someone's got to know something about this person. And I think if we all contribute, and Elder Gong gives he gives us 4 suggestions. He says, what can we do now?
Yeah. And let me see if I can find that, David. What can we do now? First, imagine you're reflecting. Is that where you're at? I think that's where you're at. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
He says, first, imagine your image reflected back and forth between 2 mirrors of eternity. If you've ever been in a ceiling room in a temple, they have those opposing mirrors there, so you can see that.
Right.
In one direction, picture yourself as daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter. In the other direction, smile at yourself as aunt, mother, grandmother. How quickly time passes. In each role, notice who is with you. Gather their photos and stories, make their memories real. Record their names, experiences, key dates. They are your family, the family you have, and the family you want. And that's just what we were talking about, to try to gather that information so that, if you can make it accessible to other people. And we have such an advantage now with the internet where we're so connected worldwide. You could probably put out there and say, hey, does anyone have any information about so-and-so? And chances are someone might have something in a book that they had, or a journal, or a family Bible, or something like that that's been passed on from generations, that's just been sitting in someone's house. And now we can get that information out there.
Absolutely. Goes on to talk about, so you said the first, he says, you perform temple ordinances for family members, the spirit of Elijah, a manifestation of the Holy Ghost bearing witness of the divine nature of the family, will knit the hearts of your fathers and mothers and children together in love. What's that scripture say? I will turn the hearts of your fathers to your children. I think that's genealogy.
Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6. And that's the promise that was made from Malachi in the promise of Elijah, where he says, I'm going to make you look towards your ancestors and your ancestors look towards you. Family history is the way we look towards our ancestors, finding out their stories. Our ancestors are looking to us to get their temple work done, to do those baptisms and other temple ordinances.
Got genealogy all over it.
It's all genealogy. Yeah, that scripture you referenced is family history, genealogy, 100%. And that spirit of Elijah is that kind of that feeling that we get that makes us look towards our ancestors and makes our ancestors look towards us, kind of focuses on us on each other.
Sure.
What's the second one?
Yeah, that was the second one, right? The third step that he gives us is to go to familysearch.org, and he says, get on there quick.
Yeah.
And start your profile and start downloading the available mobile apps. They're free and fun. Discover, connect, belong, see how you're related to people in a room, how easy and rewarding it is to add names to your living family tree and to find others and to bless the roots and branches of your family. And then, of course,
it's pretty easy on the family search app. There's I can't remember what it's called, but if you're in a room and everyone's you can look and see how closely you're related to people in that room. If they're all on that app, it'll say this is your 8th cousin or this is your 6th cousin or something like that. So
I didn't know that.
It's really cool. You all get together. We did it in a ward council once. Everyone has to have the family search app and they have to be logged in. But then it recognizes the people in the room, and then it says, "All right, we'll show you who's related to who." Well, and Elder Gong also says to make sure that you give appropriate time to family now, and to make those connections. He says, call your grandmother, look deeply into the eyes of that new baby, make time, discover eternity at each stage of your journey. He said something earlier. I'm just going to jump back to really quick. He said, in this age of I choose me, societies benefit when generations connect in meaningful ways. We need roots to have wings, real relationships, meaningful service, life beyond fleeting social media veneers. And I think what he's inviting us to do is it can be very easy. I will admit I have been in rooms with family members, and there's 6 of us in there, and all 6 of us are on our phones looking straight down. And I think, it's that's okay, I guess, but might be a missed opportunity for us to connect and talk about other things. And there's nothing wrong with social media. It's a blessing and a gift from Heavenly Father. There's nothing wrong with the internet, nothing wrong with staying connected through our phones and digital devices. But there's also a place for that personal connection, to be able just to sit down and call someone, talk to them. And so make sure that you have that balance in your life. Staying connected digitally is amazing, but don't make digital the only way you're staying connected to people. Try to make those personal connections as well.
Made me think of, so what you just said, that example a few minutes ago about being in a room and seeing how well you're connected to people around the room. They did that at Utah State at my son's for a seminary, a convocation where they all kind of got connected, and it didn't work out so well because my son said, well, I can't date that girl. She's my 3rd cousin. I can't date that girl. She's my 8th cousin. I can't date that. Kyler, I think it stops after the 1st cousin. I'm not sure, but I think it stops.
I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be okay. I think it's okay. So,
well, one of my wife's maiden name was Morgan.
So there you go.
She was the Morgan before she married me.
You married your sister.
And and we didn't check to see. We went down to the county courthouse, and I figured they'd give us a little bit of grief because our names were the same. They just gave us a marriage certificate and off we went. So we kind of had to wait till the first child to figure out if something was really wrong.
Great.
They're all fine. 10 fingers and 10 toes. So everyone's good.
There you go.
But
that's funny. I think I was can't date that girl. I like to, but
exactly. Yeah.
She's my 8th cousin. Can't date her.
I would say, look, unless you've seen her at a family reunion, then
you're good.
Date, all right,
you're good. Yeah, you're good. You're good.
And then what's the 4th one, Chad?
The fourth one's right here, but it says, help unite families eternally. Remember the demographics of heaven. There are many more on the other side of the veil than on this side. As more temples come closer to us, please offer those waiting for temple ordinances the opportunity to receive them.
Yeah.
It's beautiful how this is all threaded together, isn't it?
Yes. What he's saying is go to the temple, make time to go to the temple. The church is investing billions and tens of billions of dollars in building temples closer to people. And like you said earlier in this broadcast, Chad, how every conference they're announcing more and more temples. And I think that's specifically for the reason to get them closer to people so that people don't have to travel 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, or days to get to the temple. we have those amazing stories of faith where people had to save up their whole lives to go to the temple, and those are great stories. But I'm eager for the day when those stories don't exist anymore, because people say, well, yeah, we had to save up for 3 months because there's just a temple, 2 hours by train, in Thailand or wherever it is, wherever the closest temple was to them. And I think that of all the things the church could be doing with their money,
they're doing the right way.
They do a lot of good, but I'm guessing that one of the most significant investments is in building temples, and it's for that very purpose, so that we can go there, we can do these ordinances for our ancestors, get connected eternally with them, and that's the whole point of
bind our families together, bind them.
Yes, exactly, eternally.
And there's never been a more desperate time to do that, when families seem to be at the core of the adversary's goals to separate them. Bind your family together, even though we're going to have disagreements. Let's get through those and stay close, stay sealed.
Family first.
Family first always. Great family value right there. The FF, family first always.
Family first. Yeah, I would suggest to anyone who's watching this, if there's something you're struggling with in your family, a person you've got beef with or an argument with, man, give serious consideration to trying to resolve that. At least do your part to resolve that. There are blessings that come when we stay strong as families, and like you said, Chad, Satan is really striving hard to knock that down, and we don't need to be part of that process. So
I agree.
Let's love each other. Let's forgive and come together. So
agree.
All right.
Well, it's been enjoyable tonight. Appreciate the opportunity.
This is always a treat for me. So thanks everyone for watching. Thanks to Shane and Mandy there at Onward Productions for their just their goodness in coming up with these ideas, inviting us to be a part of them. And and tune in second Sundays for Conference Connection, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody. Thanks.